What is up, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if you're into either one of those things, please consider subscribing for more. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Andor Episode 11, titled Daughter of Ferrix. There was so much going on in this episode, and by the end of it, all our main characters seemed to be heading to Ferrix for the finale. There were also a lot of emotional moments and fun sequences throughout, which I really enjoyed, but I also have one nitpick about a certain character's death that I'll get into towards the end of the video. With that said, please consider liking this video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought of episode 11. I've been putting out weekly reviews for each episode of the Andor series, so make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out. You can check out all of my previous episode reviews and guest spots on the Krypton to Alderaan podcast, and This is the Wayseekers podcast, talking everything Andor Season 1 at the link in the cards and in the description as well. Now, let's get into this review. The episode starts off with Cassian and Melshi looking worse for wear, hanging on the side of a cliff waiting as an Imperial ship takes off above them. Judging by the dirt and dried blood, they've been hanging there for a while. Once they climb back to the top, Melshi spots two Narkinian aliens in the valley below. Realizing they have a ship, Cassian and Melshi try to make a run for it, but end up getting caught in the aliens' trap. At first, the aliens think Cassian and Melshi are part of the Empire and confront them about the prison facilities destroying their planet's water and the creatures that once lived in it. Cassian and Melshi try to explain they're not with the Empire, but the alien continues saying the Empire kills regardless of allegiances. Luckily for Cassian and Melshi, the aliens decide to help them out and they all take off for Niamos. I'm so glad we finally got some more prominent aliens in this episode, even if it was just for this short sequence. Back on Ferrix, we learn of Maarva's passing while Brasso and the daughters of Ferrix get things in order at her home and have her body removed. Poor B2 is having a really tough time processing, to the point where he's literally shaking, and Brasso offers to have them clear the room so B can have a moment alone, but in response, he tells Brasso, "I don't want to be alone, I want Maarva." Now, we've seen many emotive droids in Star Wars before, but none that seem to have true emotions and emotional attachment like B2. I felt so bad for him, I just wanted to give him a big hug in that moment. Watching the daughters of Ferrix walk Maarva's body out was really somber as well, especially with all the townspeople around and B2 watching from inside the home. I feel so sad for him because he's essentially like a pet who just lost their owner, or even a child who just lost their parent. Attendant Corv is also watching from across the street inside a restaurant, and as it turns out, Cinta just started working there. He asks her if it was someone she knew in passing, and the crazy thing about their conversation is that neither of them realizes just who the other one is. There's so much tension in their short exchange to us as the audience, but none at all to the characters. Attendant Corv reports back to Dedra advising of Maarva's death, and he, Dedra, and Captain Tigo discuss what comes next. Captain Tigo explains the Ferrix funeral customs, expecting a big send-off with Maarva being a prominent citizen. He mentions that the citizens will request a permit to close Rick's Road for the funeral, but Dedra stops him and advises Tigo to approve the permit so they can use Maarva's funeral as a way to bait Cassian back to Ferrix. With the permit, the Empire can control all the logistics of the funeral, giving a specific window for Cassian to appear, and in doing so, giving them a better chance at capturing him. We also get some cool world building for Ferrix and their customs for the dead in this scene, and if there's one thing I love about Star Wars, it's all the little world building details. We catch up with Bix, who is still being held prisoner by the Empire and dealing with the after effects of Dr. Gorst's torture. One of the Imperials basically drags her to Attendant Corv for questioning, and they show her a hologram of Anto Krieger, inquiring if he's the contact she introduced to Cassian. Obviously we know he's not, but Bix doesn't confirm nor deny before the scene ends. On Coruscant, Vel stops by Luthen's gallery to advise him of Maarva's death, only to be greeted by Kleya. Kleya and Vel seem to have some sort of strained relationship. I'm not sure if they just don't see eye to eye or if there's something more that we the audience aren't aware of yet. But Kleya tells Vel she's going off the rails, and I love how Vel snapped back at her, like the queer she is, saying, "I gave him Aldani, what have you done lately?" Bitch, I was like, yeah Kleya, what have you done lately? In the end, Vel informs her of the news and tells her she's leaving for Ferrix. I'm really loving the tension between Kleya and Vel. I wasn't super drawn to Vel at first, but since the Aldani arc, I've really been loving what she's giving. Since her arrival on Coruscant, I feel like we're finally getting to see and understand her more as a character. I also wasn't very drawn to Kleya, and since the Aldani arc, I've grown to dislike her more and more. Seeing Vel confront her in the shop and come at her, I just loved every minute of it. At the end of their conversation, Kleya tells Vel she'll inform Luthen of the news, and all Vel says in response is, "Do that," then leaves. I just really want someone to put Kleya in her place, and I loved seeing Vel challenge her this episode. Vel pays a visit to Mon Mothma later in the day, and we catch up with Mon inside her home. Lita and her friends are seen sitting around the dining table chanting in unison while Mon watches from the other room. Mon's sipping a drink, which seems to be a big indicator that she's not comfortable with whatever is going on. Once Vel arrives, she asks, "Is that really happening?" And we learn that Lita's embraced the old ways of Chandrillan culture and is taking the beginning steps of their marriage traditions on her own free will. On top of Mon denouncing the tradition, I can only imagine what Vel must feel towards it, especially being a queer woman. I'm sure she was raised within this tradition, but it seems she's somehow escaped it. Comparing my own experiences growing up queer and the expectations we're taught from birth, I can only imagine how it must have felt for Vel. I started recognizing my own queerness in my early teens, and assuming Vel did the same, imagine starting to come to terms with your sexuality, only to then realize you're going to be married to someone of the opposite sex chosen for you in the very near future for the rest of your life. I can't imagine going through all of that at the same time, and now I can only imagine what she must feel seeing Lita embrace this tradition right in front of her. The phrases yielding and acceptance, safe in the braid of the old ways, really stood out to me, specifically the words yielding, safe, and old ways. The subtitles even make a point to refer to Lita and her friends as children, which makes the ritual even more unsettling. The more I paid attention to the words being chanted and repeated, the more cultish they felt. This whole sequence made me more and more uncomfortable with each rewatch. Unfortunately for Mon Mothma, this all works out with the proposal from Davos Sculdun last episode. Lita wants to follow the marriage tradition, so you would think it's a win-win for Mon, but she's so against the idea of her daughter being subjected to everything she went through that she can't even accept this as an outcome. Mon confides in Vel, explaining her banking situation, but she just seems so defeated, and I hate seeing her like this. She explains how the rebel attack on Aldani made things so much more difficult with her banking, and I can only imagine how that made Vel feel, knowing that she orchestrated and participated in the event that got Mon in the trouble she's in. Vel asks Mon if Luthen knows about the missing credits, saying that it can't be exposed, and I'm curious if Vel will be able to work something out with Luthen to use some of the credits from Aldani to cover Mon's missing 400,000. Mon tells her she's found a solution, assuming she's referring to Davos Sculdun's offer, but Lita interrupts them, and that's the end of the conversation for now. Do you think Vel will be the one to help Mon with her missing credits, or will she have to follow through with Davos Sculdun's offer? Let me know down in the comments below. We check in with Syril, who gets a call in the middle of the night from good old Sergeant Mosk to inform him of Maarva's passing as well. Later on in the episode, we see Syril sneak back into his home after his mother leaves to steal credits from her safe, and I have to assume he's going to use those credits for passage to Ferrix. We also catch up with Luthen, who has just arrived at Saw Gerrera's camp on Segra Milo. From their conversation, it seems Saw called him there to inform him he's decided to take Luthen's offer and help Anto Krieger's attack on Spellhouse after all. Luthen tries to deter Saw, but eventually has to come clean about the ISB's trap awaiting them. Saw understandably questions Luthen's allegiances and confronts him about his choice to sacrifice Krieger, and eventually starts spiraling, thinking Luthen has spies everywhere. Luthen has to pull a gun on him just to get him to listen and understand, but in the end, Saw comes to terms with sacrificing Krieger, as he puts it, for the greater good. Once Luthen leaves the planet, he gets a call from Kleya checking in on the outcome of the meeting, and though they talk in code, it seems Luthen is still concerned about another piece, that piece being Cassian. From what I can tell, Luthen is contemplating going to Ferrix to retrieve Cassian himself, but before they can finish, the transmission cuts out and we see the Fondor being trailed by an Imperial Cantwell-class Arrestor cruiser. In true Star Wars fashion, Luthen attempts to talk his way out of the checkpoint, but the Imperials grip the Fondor in their tractor beam. At this point, Luthen has no choice but to stall while his defenses charge, and once online, he pulls some pretty cool tricks. Now, normally I'm not one to get all excited about the pew-pews and dogfights, but I loved every minute of this sequence. He literally destroys the tractor beam, takes out all 4 ties, and blasts into hyperspace in a matter of seconds. The Fondor is one hell of a ship. Back on Niamos, Cassian sneaks into the room we first found him in at the end of episode 7 to retrieve his box with his credits, blasters, and Nemik's manifesto. Interestingly enough, Cassian flips open the manifesto for a brief second and the recording of Nemik's voice starts playing. I don't know about y'all, but to me it seems like the recording started in the middle of the manifesto rather than at the beginning. So I have a feeling Cassian's been slowly listening to it over time. He makes a call to Ferrix, attempting to get a message to his mother, but Zan has to be the bearer of bad news and inform Cassian of Maarva's passing. It was a really emotional moment seeing Cassian's reaction to the news, and I love the way the scene was shot and the music that accompanied it. From there, Melshi tells Cass they should split up, explaining one of them needs to survive to make sure their story is told, especially for those who didn't make it out of the Imperial prison alive. I feel like Cassian is truly alone for the first time in a long time, but on top of that, he now has nothing left to lose. I'm very interested to see how the events in Season 1 will affect him going forward in the series. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm kinda sad Maarva died off screen. I think not seeing her last moments made the emotional scenes in this episode not hit as hard for me, specifically with B2 and when Cassian learns about her death at the end. Maarva was such an integral character to Cassian's story, but having her die off screen unceremoniously, I don't know. I'm also in the process of getting over a sinus infection, so maybe that has something to do with it, but I feel like she just deserved a better send-off. Now at this point, it seems all our characters are headed to Ferrix for a big showdown next episode, and I can't wait to see how everything plays out in the finale. The only main character I don't expect to see converge at the showdown is Mon Mothma, and at this point, we know her main concern is getting her banking issue resolved. Will she have to go through with Davo's offer, or will we see someone else come to her aid in the finale? Her storyline is really the only wild card going into it, and I'm really interested to see how it plays out. What do you think will happen next week in the finale? Let me know down in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter so we can chat more about it together. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my Andor Season 1 finale review. You can check out all my previous episode reviews and guest spots on the Krypton to Alderaan podcast and This is the Wayseekers podcast, talking everything Andor Season 1 at the link in the description and on the end screen of this video. Please consider checking them out and leaving a like. I really appreciate all of your support. To keep up with all my Star Wars content, make sure to subscribe and consider following me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Scotty Holiday SW for all my latest updates. Thank you all so much for watching as always, and may the Force be with you.